I never imagined finding a K9 tied to a tree in the snow would lead to a life-changing bond. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The cold was biting, creeping into my bones, making me shiver. Flakes of snow fluttered down from the ashen sky, swirling around me like tiny ghosts. I was walking through the park, alone and lost in thought. My heart felt heavy, burdened by pain. Mom had just left, and everything felt so dark. I thought about how the world seemed to spin, indifferent to my loss. That's when I saw it. A flash of movement caught my eye. At first, I thought it was just a trick of the light, but as I got closer, dread gripped my chest. There, tangled in a mass of branches and thick snow, was a dog. A K9. Its beautiful coat was dulled with grime, and its breath came out in shaky puffs of smoke, each one a sign of its suffering. My heart raced, and I could barely think. Who would do this? Who leaves a loyal companion out in the cold? I knelt down, the snow soaking through my jeans. The K9's eyes were wide, filled with fear and desperation. I could see every rib, its condition a silent scream for help. The silence around us was deafening. I reached out, my hand trembling. It flinched at first, but then something shifted. Maybe hope flickered within those dark, trusting eyes. This was no ordinary dog. There was something almost mystical about the bond we shared in that moment. I cut the rope that bound it, feeling a rush of relief. It was free. But as it leapt to its feet, that sense of freedom quickly turned to chaos. The K9 darted away, vanishing into the drifting snow, leaving me gasping in shock. I felt a pang of disappointment, fear clawing at my mind. Had I ruined everything? Was it ever going to trust me? Then, just as suddenly, it stopped. It turned and looked back at me, that bond still hanging between us, fragile but alive. A heartbeat passed. Could I really set it free, knowing it might not come back? What if it needed me just as much as I needed it? Before I could comprehend what was happening, it took a cautious step forward, its eyes searching mine as if asking a question I wasn't sure I could answer. My heart raced. I wanted to reach for it again, to tell it I wouldn't abandon it like so many others. But would it believe me? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions. I would find myself wandering the park every afternoon, hoping to catch a glimpse of the K9. Each time I arrived, the frosty air seemed to whisper the dog's name Bane, as I had taken to calling him. It felt right. He was strong and fierce, yet tender in his vulnerability. On the third day, just as the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the snow, I finally saw him. He was curled up beneath a gnarled oak tree, the place where our journey had begun. My heart soared and plummeted at once. This time, he looked less like a shadowy figure and more like a heart waiting to be filled with love. I approached cautiously, as though entering a realm where trust was foreign. "Bane!" I whispered, anxiety threading its way through my tone. He raised his head slowly, eyes locking onto mine, calculating, but no longer filled with the same intense fear. I sat down on the snow, a pure act of surrender which seemed to spark a moment of hesitation in him. To my utter disbelief, Bane padded over to me, his gait tentative yet curious. The world fell silent around us, my breath visible as it mingled with clouds of vapor in the icy air. He sniffed my outstretched hand, and I could feel the heat of his breath against my skin. In that moment, I knew we were writing a new chapter together, one steeped in possibility, but then, all at once, the tranquility shattered. A sharp voice called out, echoing through the park stillness. "Bane! Get back here!" My heart sank as a man burst into view, his silhouette stark against the winter landscape. He dashed toward us, his brow furrowed with anger. It was then I realized the bonds binding Bane were not just the literal ropes that had once tied him. They ran deeper, entwined with a past that could easily claim him again. "Bane? Come!" The man's command boomed through the air like a gunshot. My heart raced as I debated my next move. Should I stand my ground or flee? But a wave of resolute defiance surged through me. "No!" I shouted before I could think better of it. "He's free now! You can't take him away again!" The man slowed, bemusement flashing across his features, tinged with the kind of rage that only comes from losing control. "You have no idea what you're doing," he sneered. "That dog belongs to me. Bane deserves a chance at life he'd love." I couldn't believe the words tumbled from my mouth with such fire. The K9 shifted beside me, looking between us, caught between two worlds that wanted to lay claim on him. "That dog doesn't need to be with an unfit owner. You don't know what he's been through." I pressed on, desperation creeping into my voice. I felt like a young girl standing up to a bully on the playground, but this was bigger than my insecurities. It was about Bane finding safety. As I stood my ground, something unexpected happened. A woman appeared from behind a grove of trees, her coat wrapped tightly around her. "Please, just let him go. This isn't right," she implored, her voice soft yet firm. There was kindness in her eyes, and though I didn't know her, I felt a rush of gratitude. The man's face twisted in confusion, as if caught off guard by this sudden change. "And who are you? Some do-gooder in a broken sweater?" For a moment, I thought he would turn on her, but the air thickened with tension and his frustration morphed into uncertainty. Bane glanced back and forth between us, sensing the gravity of the moment. Perhaps he realized he was at a crossroads to a decision lay before him, and it could determine his future. As the confrontation swirled, reality hit me harder than the icy wind that howled around us. Time was running out. Bane might choose to return to the man who had wronged him, or he could stay with me, where hope and healing waited. Yet, as the standoff continued, I could feel the first tendrils of dread creeping in. What if this was it? What if the bond one had hoped to forge was slipping through my fingers right before my eyes? With rising urgency, the woman stepped closer. "We can't let him go back to a life of misery. Animals deserve better. Love is stronger than any leash." But before I could muster the courage to speak again, an unexpected sound echoed through the cold air. The whir of an approaching vehicle, an SUV encroaching on our fragile standoff, pulled my heart into my throat. And with that, I knew everything was about to change. As the SUV halted a short distance from us, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. A cloud of exhaust billowed around it, clouding the tense air with an acrid smell. I held my breath as the door swung open, revealing two uniformed officers stepping out with a calculated urgency. My heart raced in my chest, the rhythm echoing my panic. "Is this the dog?" One of them called out, eyes immediately locking onto Bane. The man who claimed him nodded vigorously, his anger morphing into frantic relief. He glanced at me, an almost predatory glint igniting in his eyes. "Yes, that's him. He's been missing, and these people are trying to steal him away." The officers took a step closer, their gazes darting between Bane, the man, and myself. The unexpected arrival of the authorities shifted the dynamic, and all of my bravado seemed to drain away. Now, the very people I'd trusted to advocate for Bane could easily turn against me. "Ma'am, could you tell us what's going on?" One officer's tone was neutral, professional, yet there was a hint of skepticism beneath. The weight of his gaze felt heavy, As if dissecting my very soul, I stammered, desperately searching for the right words. Bane doesn't belong to him. He needs freedom. Love. My voice trembled, and for a moment, doubt sliced through my conviction. Did I really know what was best for him? But in that uncertain moment, Bane shifted closer, his nose nudging against my leg as if grounding me in an unseen bond. This wasn't just a dog. He was a survivor, and so was I in many ways. Gathering my strength, I continued. He was abused. He deserves a chance at happiness. The other officer, a woman with kind eyes, knelt down, her gaze softening as she looked at Bane. "Hey there, buddy," she cooed. "You've been through a lot, haven't you?" I watched as the fear within him began to dissipate, replaced by the hope that a gentle touch can bring. Something within me ignited. This was about more than just words. It was about seeing the soul beneath the scars. Yet, the man didn't relent. "This is ridiculous. He is my property, and you're just enabling a stray." His mouth twisted in frustration as he stepped forward, attempting to reclaim his authority, but the officers held him back. "You need to step back, sir," the female officer said firmly. "We're going to need to evaluate the situation. If there's documented abuse, that changes everything." "I can prove he's mine," he shouted, desperation turning the air electric. "I have the paperwork." With every additional moment that passed, I felt more empowered, but also more desperate. The stakes were rising not just for me, but for Bane. Nurtured beneath icy indifference, anger ignited within me. He might be on paper, but papers can't hold the love he deserves. Amidst the chaos, the kind woman who had come to my aid moved closer, her eyes shining with understanding. "Let's focus on what's best for Bane," she said gently, her presence a stabilizing force. "There's a legal process for this, and it's meant to protect animals from neglect and abuse. Listen to your conscience. He needs to feel safe." The man's face contorted with rage, but I sensed his control was slipping. He turned sharply to the officers. "You can't let this happen. He's been my K9 partner for years. Without him, I'm nothing." The words hung in the air, poisonous and sharp. Suddenly, the realization hit me: his man wasn't just claiming ownership. He was clinging to a past where Bane had been his shield against his own ghosts. A realization both tragic and pitiful slithered into my heart. Yet, as the officers deliberated, I could feel an insistent pressure building. It turned to a knot in my stomach as I began to remember my own losses, the ache of longing for something I couldn't protect, especially since I now felt responsible for a life so fragile and deserving of light. And then it hit me, a visceral understanding that shocked me to my core. I couldn't control this situation entirely, but I could be the voice Bane needed. If he's really a service dog, then he has the right to choose, deserves to feel safe, I shouted, tears blurring the edges of my vision. Tension crackled like the sparks before a storm, and then a change swept through the gathering. As the officers consulted one another, a flicker of understanding seemed to shine in their eyes, the warmth of compassion kindling against a backdrop of cold authority. But before any decision could solidify, a shattering shout echoed across the park. "Bane!" Turning, I saw a familiar face emerging from the trees, a woman with wild hair and a determined gait. My heart stumbled as I recognized her. Megan, the woman from the shelter who had rescued many forgotten souls. She had shown me the depths of their pain and joy. I could only wonder what grace did she bring into this heartbreaking confrontation. What would her presence mean for Bane? Before she could reach me, the man turned, his bravado slipping into bewilderment. The commotion fell silent, each of us suspended in the weight of the moment, and in an inexplicable twist, Bane stepped forward, breaking the tether that had bound him. He glanced back toward me, uncertainty in his eyes mingled with an ember of hope. And that simple gesture felt like the spark that ignited a fire in my chest. The story of our lives was yet to be told, and in that single heartbeat, the world shifted. But as time hung heavy like the last moments before a storm, I couldn't help but feel that a reckoning loomed over USA choice that would change everything. The air thickened with an unspoken weight, each heartbeat resonating louder, as shock settled over the assembly. Megan came to a halt, her wild hair framing her face like a tempest, eyes wide with recognition. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice steady but laced with concern as she absorbed the chaos surrounding Bain. "Bain?" I whispered, the name barely escaping my lips, as if saying it out loud would unravel everything. I felt his presence, his weary spirit peeking through the semblance of control I was grasping at. Would this rupture our fragile bond? "This man says Bain is his," I managed, my voice trembling. "But he's been abused. He needs a home where he feels safe." The truth of my words echoed through the stillness, reverberating like the first drops of rain in an impending storm. Megan's eyes softened as she crouched, a calming anchor in a turbulent sea. "Hey there, boy," she cooed, reaching out toward Bain. His tail gave a tentative wag, a flicker of trust igniting. "You look so much better than the last time I saw you." She turned, fixing her gaze on the man who once believed he owned Bain. "You shouldn't have him back, not after what he's been through." The man's bravado cracked, just a little, as he stepped back, glancing nervously at the officers. "He's mine," he protested, yet the plea seemed less confident, strained by the unexpected alliance formed against him. At that moment, I found my voice again. "It's not just ownership. It's a connect I own, a living, breathing bond built on trust. You can't just take him back, disregard what he's experienced. He matters, and I vow to protect that." My heart raced, forging a path through the uncertainty that lay ahead. The woman officer exchanged a glance with her partner, her brow furrowing in contemplation. "Sir, we need to investigate the claims of abuse. If we find any evidence, the dog's welfare must come first." The warning rang firm, punctuating the air as the man's posture faltered, teeth gritting, fingers twitching at his side. "Are you really going to believe a couple of women?" he scoffed, but his voice trembled, fear worming beneath his bravado. Megan straightened, the sunlight glinting off a small metal badge she wore around her neck, a subtle emblem of her work. "Believe in the bond that Bain has with those who've shown him kindness. He deserves a chance, just like any survivor. We can't let him be a trophy for somebody's ego," she said firmly, conviction ringing like a bell. An urge surged within me, an instinct not to just be a mere bystander but to act. I stepped slightly forward, closing the distance to Bain as he hesitated between us all, uncertain, but hopeful reflection of my own emotions swirling in the depths of my heart. Megan's presence felt like the warm flicker of a candle in the dark, and as I reached forward, Bain stepped toward me, a silent acknowledgment of our kindred spirits. It was then I saw something flicker in his eyes, a memory of pain, yes, but a burgeoning trust, as if he recognized that I wouldn't allow the darkness of his past to claim him again. But the man, a once formidable figure, now crumbling beneath the weight of his own turmoil, took a step closer. "You don't know what you're doing. He's all I have left," he shouted, his voice strained. "You think just because you showed him some kindness, you can play savior?" The sadness in his voice revealed layers of despair, fractures in the facade had built around himself. I didn't want to hate him. I wanted to understand how someone could become so blinded by loss that they would harm another soul to fill the void. And as I stood there, a realization jolted through me, a moment of unexpected compassion for a man lost in his own nightmares. Yet, the intensity of the situation coiled tighter, and I had to force my gaze back to Bain, the pulsing heart of this unfolding drama. His body trembled slightly, each breath he took reflecting the palpable confusion surrounding us. "He won't be your shield anymore," I whispered to him, more for myself than him, trying to translate my thoughts into something tangible. Just then, a wailing siren pierced the air, slicing through the tension, swiftly followed by the emergence of a second patrol vehicle. More officers stepped out, and for a fleeting moment, I felt hope wavering. What additional scrutiny lay ahead, and would it bring solace or further spirals of chaos? As the officers approached, I turned back to Bain, desperate to convey calmness. "You're loved, you're safe, and that's all that matters right now," I said, steadiness warming my voice. But inside, apprehension flickered. What would happen next could unravel everything. Before I could brace myself, the lead officer, a solid man with compassionate eyes, approached, hand extended, palms open. "Let's all take a step back and breathe." His presence seemed to blanket the scene with a degree of authority that somehow felt comforting. Just then, a thick, cracked cardboard folder slipped from the hands of the man, tumbling to the grass. I watched as it splayed open, revealing a series of photographs. I nearly gasped. Images of Bain, caged and broken, bruises littering his once proud form. A series of glimpses into his life with this man. But then came another revelation, a photo snapshot of a child, holding Bain in their arms, the connection fierce and unbreakable. Beneath it, hastily scrawled words. "Help me get my dog back. I can't lose everything." And with that revelation, I could feel Bain freeze beside me, his eyes wide, the flickering trust grounding deep within. Suddenly, everything shifted into perspective, each tangled root of our lives intertwining in a way I hadn't anticipated. Tears welling in my eyes, I turned to the propelling sound of his past, facing an unsure future colored with unyielding emotion, knowing that this battle was far from over, pulling us both deeper into a journey that had yet to unfurl its destiny. The chaos swirled around me like a cyclone, instantly magnetizing the surrounding attention to the photographs sprawled on the grass. The child, so small and innocent, offered a grounding reality amidst the storm of emotions now crashing around me. Each breath I took felt laden with the weight of responsibility, not just for Bain, but for a world where lives were entwined in horrifying patterns of loss and love. I had no idea, I murmured to myself, all eyes shifting toward the man who seemed to visibly shrink as the truth unfolded. His bravado faded, replaced by the ghost of despair I now recognized as he stumbled back, cheeks flushed with shame. "This isn't your fault," I said gently, feeling the urge to reach out to him, but knowing the moment wasn't mine to claim. Instead, it was Bain who needed support, the silent sentinel absorbing the confusing energy around him. "What's going on?" A new voice cut through the thick atmosphere, possessing an authority that steadied the room. A woman officer, her badge gleaming as she stepped forward, knelt beside the photographs. Her eyes scanned the images, shifting back to the man, question after question brewing beneath the surface of her measured expression. The man opened his mouth to speak, his words faltering into a whisper, a confession long withheld. "I didn't mean to," he started, but the words slipped away, leaving only a hollow echo behind. I wanted to scream in frustration. He had harmed Bain, had forced fears into a creature meant for joy. And yet, amid my anger, flickers of understanding crackled a glimpse of the childhood that once was, now disturbingly tangled within the adult he had become. "Can we just pause for a moment?" Megan interjected, her voice soothing but firm. "What's important is finding Bain a home. He's already been through so much. Every moment counts." It was the mention of home that shifted my perception. I glanced back at Bain, whose soulful eyes mirrored the fear and uncertainty emanating from within me. This was his moment of reckoning, where paths could diverge or collide, where loyalty and trust hovered in the balance. What did it mean to have a home? What would it mean for him? "We need to notify the shelter," the woman officer stated, her tone now imbued with urgency, "and we need to hear from that child." My stomach twisted at the thought of bringing despair to an innocent heart, the very child who had once bestowed joy to Bain. As much as I was desperate to shield the dog from further trauma, I could not deny the pull of responsibility, the necessity of reuniting Bain with the parts of his past that might still harbor hope. An idea sparked within me like lightning igniting dry brush. What if I hesitated, the room hanging on my words? What if we could have them both take part in this? The child, the man, even Bane. We need to give Bane a chance to choose. What if he could meet the child? Megan's expression lit up with cautious optimism, as if she too felt the potential glimmering in the surrounding darkness. That might be a way to determine what he truly wants. But what if? The man interrupted, a quiver of desperation threading through his voice. What if they don't want him back? What if he chooses to stay away? As he spoke those words, my heart cracked open at the vulnerability nested within them. Here was a man terrified of rejection, clinging to the remnants of a bond twisted under shadows of past wrongs. Could healing come from that fracturing moment? With one gesture of compassion they could each rediscover the essence of love buried beneath layers of heartbreak. "Let's not think about that just yet," the officer said, her voice gentle yet still commanding. "We need to ensure Bane's safety first, and that starts with the child's well-being. We'll move forward with the investigation. I understand this must be very hard for all involved." Before I could respond, another flicker of warmth caught my eye. A little girl, with tiny hands clutched tightly around a stuffed animal, edged closer, her eyes wide and hopeful, but draped in the drabness of uncertainty. The moment she laid eyes on Bane, something transcendental occurred. He perked up, and it was as if a flame flickered back to life. Their stares locked, humanity intertwined in a timeless connection that echoed across the trauma both had endured. "What's your name?" she whispered, her voice trembling with an innocence that pierced the chaos around us. "Bane," I murmured, knowing how much he wanted to be known, how much he needed to feel seen again. In that instant, still held fast to hope, I watched as the shadows danced momentarily away. Both the girl and the man seemed to take a breath, the air humming with possibility, desperation giving way to something more profound. But just as I thought progress was within our grasp, a voice from behind thundered through the air, invading our fragile moment. "What is this? You're not taking my dog from me." The confrontation widened like a fissure in the ground, disruptive and challenging. The man's eyes burned with a new determination, and I felt the hairs on my arms rise. He wasn't ready to lose Bane. The turmoil roiling within him was far from extinguished. As the tension mounted and boundaries were tested, dread coiled in my stomach. An unexpected alliance with repercussions yet unseen flared against the strength of healing. Hearts and souls hung undone and open, tantalizingly close to connection, yet on the brink of further turmoil. I couldn't shake the looming sense that everything was about to change. But how much more would we have to endure before finding a resolution? My pulse quickened, the thin thread of hope now slackening. Would the glimmering light of reunion be extinguished before it could ignite? I closed my eyes, clutching tightly to the vulnerable bond we'd forged, knowing the road ahead was fraught with heartache, but unforgettably vital. In the cascading shadows of the unfolding chaos, the piercing echo of the stranger's voice followed me like a dark specter, gnawing at the delicate seam of hope that had begun to stitch itself into the air. "What is this? You're not taking my dog from me." The words were a crude wake-up call, shattering the newfound connection between Bane and the little girl. "Calm down," the officer barked, instantly shifting her focus to the intruder, who emerged like a tempest amidst a fragile peace. The rough edges of his silhouette cut through the gentleness of the moment, threatening to dismantle the fragile architecture we had built with shared glances and tentative handholds. "Bane is not just a dog. He deserves better than being tied to a tree like a discarded toy." The incredulity in my voice surprised me, as emotion spilled forth unbidden. Each sentiment was like a tiny knife I wielded, piercing through the weight of despair that threatened to smother all possibility. "He is my dog." The man's voice surged, clashing with mine as the tension escalated. It was as if the events swirling around him had transformed him into a lion, showing teeth that hadn't been exposed until now. His desperation ignited something within me, a recognition of the pain behind his actions. "Then prove it," I challenged, my heart racing beneath the layers of adrenaline. Help us make this right. Show us you care enough to let him go, if it means he'll be safe. In the midst of my fiery plea, I caught glimpses of the little girl's wide eyes, shimmering with tears that threatened to spill over. Each glimmer was a reminder of innocence tainted by the shadows of adulthood, the very shadows that cloaked the man's heart. She's right, the officer added, her voice slowly transitioning from command to compassion. This isn't just about you. It's about Bane and a chance for him to heal. We're offering you a choice. Your decision matters. There was a moment, a breath of clarity as the man's breath hitched, uncertainty flickering across his hardened facade. He took a step back, as if the ground beneath him had shifted imperceptibly, revealing hidden depths of emotions head long buried. Suddenly, the little girl stepped forward, her stuffed animal clutched tightly in her hands. I just want him to be happy again, she said, her words gentle but imbued with a profound wisdom only children possess. There was a raw sincerity in her voice that sliced through the tension clouding the air. Will you let him come home with me? The man's face twisted as if each word was a physical blow. I can't, he whispered, a fissure of sorrow cracking through his voice. I did terrible things. What if he hates me? No, I pressed. He won't. Love is stronger than fear. I turned to the little girl, who gazed at me wide-eyed, as if absorbing my words like a life raft tossed to a drowning sailor. Bane needs you to show him that love is still possible. You can be the light he follows back to hope. She reached out, patting Bane on the head as he laid his chin on her lap, a quiver of trust radiating from his body. Her fingers moved gently through his shaggy fur, and for a fleeting moment, the world fell away. The anger, the confusion, the heaviness of responsibility vanished, replaced by an ethereal glow of connection shared between a child and a dog, both longing for solace. But at that moment, the man jolted forward, urgency clawing at his throat. Wait! Someone else has to be involved. I can't do this alone. There's more to it, things you don't understand. The fear pouring from his eyes gave rise to new worries, a sense that this struggle was far from over. You don't know what's coming. Before I could demand clarity, the officer's radio crackled to life, a sharp intrusion that sliced through the intimate retreat we had temporarily found. All units, we have a report of malicious activity nearby. Suspect in pursuit requesting backup. Like an electrical pulse threading through the room, every heart stilled. The man's expression shifted from despair to something darker, masking his vulnerability with a veil of alarm. He turned to the door, his eyes darting in panic. I need to go. There's something I left unfinished. Wait! I shouted, but it was too late. He bolted, his footsteps echoing down the hallway, frantic and unyielding, leaving us swallowed in uncertainty. The officer rushed to the door, scanning the dimly lit corridor. Stay here, she commanded before disappearing after him. I felt my legs tremble under the weight of impending loss, the gravitation toward chaos palpable yet hard to resist. I knelt beside the little girl, who gazed back at me with the innocence of a child faced with sudden upheaval. What if he doesn't come back? She whispered, her voice scarcely a breath. He will, I assured her, but as the words slipped from my lips, I felt the tremor of doubt echoing in my heart. What if he didn't? What if the fleeting connections craved by Bane and this child twisted away, sent spiraling into unknown darkness? The seconds ticked by like hours, lumping heavy shadows across the room, where once connection thrived amidst chaos. My heart raced, now propelled by anxiety. Would we be left in grief once more? Would fear extinguish the flicker of hope we had managed to ignite? Just as I was consumed by despair and uncertainty, a voice caught me off guard, whispering from the recesses of the room. He's in more danger than you know. I turned, and my heart dropped as I recognized the source. It was an unsteady figure encased in worry, a woman with haunted eyes dragging the weight of dark secrets. As our gazes locked, The tension held by unanswered questions poured through the air, and I knew that the road ahead would twist in ways I had never imagined. The icy tendrils of fear curled around my heart as I faced the woman, her presence a stark reminder of the storm brewing just beyond the fragile barrier we had built. Her disheveled hair framed a face etched with lines of worry, a stark contrast to the innocence held in the little girl's wide, waiting eyes. In that moment, a sense of resolve began to bloom within me, clinging stubbornly to the hope that hadn't yet been extinguished. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly, not from fear, but from an indescribable urgency to understand the impending danger. "What do we need to know?" The woman hesitated, glancing toward the door, as if expecting it to swing open any moment. She took a deep breath, the air trembling with tension. "Those who own Bane, or once did, are not just involved in his neglect. There are forces at play that go beyond the simple ties of ownership." She swallowed hard. "He's part of something dark." I tried to help him, but the people who came looking for him. Her voice trailed off as her eyes lost their focus, drifting into a memory that seemed to shackle her to the past. "Please," I pressed, taking a cautious step forward, "you need to tell us. We can help you." But the words faltered in her throat, a dam ready to break, but held together by fear. I turned to the little girl, who looked up at me with the same fervent hope I had momentarily grasped from the stranger. It was in her eyes, the longing for safety, the desire to save Bane not just from the physical chains binding him, but from the torment behind them. "I watched him through the window," the woman finally whispered, her voice barely above a murmur. "They came and went as if he were just a pawn in their game. They are ruthless, capable of doing anything to get what they want. They left him to suffer, and all I could do was stand by. I had to run before they found out I'd interfered." Her hand shook, betraying the braver facade she tried to maintain. "Who are they?" I asked, the knot in my stomach tightening with each word unfolding. "What do they want with him? I don't know everything." She cast a fearful glance at the now empty doorway, almost as if expecting the shadows to swallow her whole. "But I know they're after something big. They think Bane holds a key, a secret that could ruin them if it were to fall into the right hands." I felt the weight of her words crash around me like cold water. So many lives, threaded together by fragility, now woven into the same dangerous tapestry, all standing on the edge of an unseen precipice. "We need to alert the officers," I said, suddenly feeling the pulse of urgency quicken. "They have to understand the threat. No." The woman's voice pulled taut with fear, her hands grasping my arm. "They're not safe. They're involved either knowingly or unknowingly. Trust me, we need to take the girl and Bane and find a secure place. They will come back." Panic surged in my veins. How could we protect Bane and this innocent child from the darkness that loomed ahead? "What can we do?" I whispered, glancing over to the door where the sound of hurried footsteps suddenly caught my attention. That was when the little girl stepped forward, her voice resolute, breaking through the heaviness of our fears. "Can I help?" she asked, determination shining in her eyes. "Bane is my friend. If he's in danger, I want to save him." Her words seemed to ebb some of the confusion swirling around us, casting a fragile light into the thick fog of uncertainty. I felt a surge of affection for this brave child, who seemed so small yet held a heart capable of great love. "You're already helping simply by being here," I reassured her before turning back to the woman. "But we need to figure something out quickly." "You said they would come back?" "Yes, they will," she said, her expression darkening. "And when they do, it will not just be for Bane. They'll come to tie up loose ends, to eliminate any threat left in their path." I swallowed hard, the gravity of our situation pressing down heavier than the fallen snow outside. The little girl looked up at me expectantly, an indomitable ember of courage sparking in her bright eyes. Before I could formulate a plan, the distant sound of voices echoed through the corridor, urgency anchoring our breaths. My heart raced as the realization set in we were out of time. The officer and the man had not returned, and danger was now a tangible threat we could feel buzzing in the air. Fairy lights replaced by embers of anxiety. "Follow my lead," I whispered to the woman. "We need to get Bane and get out of here." The windows might still be an option. As we exchanged glances, a flicker of camaraderie sparked between us, binding us in our shared purpose. I extended my hand toward the girl, grateful for the strength in her small fingers as they clasped mine. Together we took on the weight of the moment, fortified by the unshakable belief that our bond could shield us against the darkness encroaching from outside. Then, just as we took our first collective step towards the future, a thunderous crash resonated through the building like a signal heralding the coming storm. The door burst open, revealing figures outlined in ominous silhouettes, their sinister laughter dripping with malice as they advanced toward us. Caught between a flickering hope and the overwhelming sensation of dread, I knew our journey had only just begun. But in that instant, the warmth of the little girl's hand clutched in mine offered a flicker of defiance, a representation of the light we would clutch fiercely, even as we stood on the brink of chaos. The air went thick with tension as the figures moved closer, their laughter echoing off the walls like a sinister chant. The shadows stretched longer, swallowing the dim light of the corridor as they fanned out, closing in on us. "Run!" I managed to gasp, pushing the little girl and the woman forward, my heart pounding in my ears. I wasn't even sure where we were headed. Any direction felt better than facing those who were so clearly hell-bent on harm. The fear that gripped my chest was now replaced by an instinctual drive to protect the innocents that surrounded me. We dashed to the side, hearts racing in synchronization as we ducked into a narrow alcove just off the corridor. A small part of me wished for a door to slam shut behind us to barricade our escape, but the reality was far more daunting. We were trapped, with nowhere to go but forward into danger. "What do we do now?" the woman hissed, her brow creased with a mix of fear and desperation as she frantically searched for an exit. The little girl pressed close to me, her small body trembling as she clutched my arm, her bravery momentarily overshadowed by the trauma unfolding before us. "We can't go without Bane," I whispered, knowing that each second we lingered here was another moment closer to capture. The woman nodded, and a flash of resolve ignited in her expression. "Bane is in that room." She pointed toward a door at the end of the corridor, slightly ajar and casting long shadows as light spilled into the hall. "We need to get him out. I know how to do this." Just as I started to move, the gleam of light from the doorway caught the eye of one of the figures. He halted, glancing our way with a cold smirk, clearly relishing the chase. "Found you," he called, his voice cutting through the air like a blade. Time seemed to slow as I felt an overwhelming sense of dread swelling within. We needed to act, and fast. "Go!" I urged, shoving the woman and the girl toward the door. "I'll hold them off as long as I can." "No." The woman's eyes blazed with defiance, and she turned back to me. "You're coming with us. We can't leave anyone behind." But there was no time for debate. I had to protect them, and I couldn't allow the darkness to take another innocent soul. "Just go!" I shouted, my voice vehement yet laced with an emotional plea. "Get Bane. He'll find you." With a nod that conveyed an unspoken understanding, they dashed toward the door. I could feel my heart tearing at the seams for the courage it took them to leave me behind. As they slipped into the room, I braced myself, summoning any remaining strength to keep the shadows at bay. The figures were almost upon me when a sudden flicker of movement caught my attention. It was another silhouette emerging from the darkness, but this time, it wasn't malevolent. A flash of blonde Hyra face, familiar yet unexpected, suddenly registered in my hazy mind. "Riley?" I breathed, half in disbelief. There she stood, with her fiery spirit and the unwavering energy that had once been a light in my darkest days. but the urgency in her features flickered like a candle nearing its end. "I can't believe I found you here," she whispered, urgency replacing surprise as she approached cautiously. "You need to get out now. They're dangerous." Before I could respond, the figure of the man shot forward with a menacing sneer, eyes locking onto Riley, with a certain intensity that held malice. "Let's play a game, shall we?" he taunted, stepping between us and blocking any escape. Riley wasn't waiting for an invitation. She grabbed my arm with a fierce grip. "Follow me. We have to get out together," she commanded, her voice commanding a calm I desperately needed in the chaos. I didn't have time to question how she found me or just what had transpired since our last encounter. All I could focus on was the need to serve Evito join the woman and the girl in the other room before it was too late. With Riley leading the way, we dashed through the narrow confines of the building. I could feel the walls closing in, the shadows stretching greedily towards us. As we raced down the maze-like hall, another crash echoed behind us, sending adrenaline spikes through my veins. Then, abruptly, the ground beneath Riley's feet crumbled. A hidden trapdoor swung open, her figure disappearing into the dark just a heartbeat before a loud yell erupted from one of our pursuers. "No!" I screamed, halting in my tracks as panic clawed at my chest. I had just lost sight of her in the chaotic haze, the one person I thought I could trust amid this madness. Voices grew louder, footsteps pounding against the floor as the figures regrouped, inching closer to where Riley had vanished. Desperation pulled within me, but I was tethered, unable to move forward, unsure if I should dive into the unknown after her or try to find the others. Suddenly, a fierce roar erupted from the room behind me, unmistakably Bane's, its sound a powerful reminder of the urgency at hand. The girl's faint cry soon followed, beckoning me toward them. I had to decide between the strain of loyalty and duty toward my past friend or the responsibility to protect those innocent lives. With my heart aching and my resolve fortified, I darted toward the noise, hoping to find a way to unite with Bane and the others while carrying the weight of uncertainty and now newfound fear for Riley. Even as I forged my path into the heart of the storm, the question lingered ominously. Had Riley merely been a fleeting beacon of hope, or would her return open doors to new realms of peril we hadn't yet begun to traverse? The air crackled with tension, intertwining with the faint sounds of chaos behind me as I raced toward the room where Bane was likely held captive. I could almost feel the warmth of innocence radiating from the woman and the little girl, urging me on as if their very lives depended on my swift decision. Each step was buoyed by the echoes of youthful laughter, a stark contrast to the monstrous laughter that had hung like a shroud moments before. The door swung open as I approached, light spilling from within and momentarily blinding me. My eyes widened at the scene. The woman stood defiantly before an imposing figure, her back to me, while the little girl cowered behind her, trembling yet somehow trusting. "Unhand him," the woman commanded, her voice fierce and unwavering in the face of danger. I stepped into the room, ready to join her in a united front. But in that instant, the shadowy figure turned, his mocking smile revealing blackened teeth. "What a brave little family we have here," he sneered, his words dripping with venom. "But your time is almost up." Bane was caught in the man's grasp, an invisible tether binding him away from us. The desperation clawed at my insides, the need to save not just Bane, but this family growing stronger with each second. "Let him go," I shouted, a plea wrapped in fury, but the malevolence only deepened in the figure's eyes. Before he could react, the woman lunged, a burst of unexpected strength propelling her forward. Rage ignited the air as she collided with the figure. It was a brief moment of chaos, a flicker of hope shimmering in the murky shadows surrounding us. "Go!" she shouted at Bane. "Run!" But Bane was more than a creature of muscle and instinct. He was family, and family doesn't abandon one another, not when danger is breathing down their necks. As he broke free from his captor's hold, It was as if time paused, and in that suspended moment, we all shared an understanding steeped in loyalty and unbreakable bonds. He bolted towards the door, a four-legged guardian with the heart of a lion. The little girl squealed with newfound courage, springing toward Bane. The woman hesitated, then quickly followed suit. With my heart in my throat, I sprinted after them. Yet our escape was intricately woven with peril. As we dashed back into the corridor, the laughter of our pursuers rang out like a twisted melody. The realization that they were closing in on us sunk deep. If we didn't find refuge soon, we would risk being swept away into the darkness. In the midst of the dreadful chase, a flicker of hope illuminated the path ahead. An illuminated exit sign glimmered faintly in the distance. Just as the figures emerged from the shadows behind us, we reached a doorway leading outside. Light streamed in, illuminating the fresh white snow that blanketed the grounds. It was a stark contrast to the darkness that had gripped us, a reminder that there was still purity and goodness waiting beyond our nightmarish reality. But with hope came a new challenge. The door creaked open, and a gust of icy air rushed in, filling my lungs with a chilling reminder of our broken world. Though we stumbled outside, the snow crunched underfoot, and the biting cold seeped through our clothes, reminding us all too vividly that safety remained a distant dream. "Keep running," I shouted, glancing back to see Bane barking at the figures that had emerged beneath the doorframe. The shadows extended empires of terror behind us, but there was a strange warmth nestled within the chaotic rush of connection, perhaps sealed by the trials we had survived together. We sprinted through the white expanse, fueled by fear and the urgency to escape, but my mind couldn't shake off the image of Riley. Had she found her way out? Was she lost in the darkness alone? Doubt played against the fragile hope I tried so desperately to cling to. The weight of my decision pressed down on me, a reminder that while I was running toward one form of salvation, another lay unspoken in the shadows. Suddenly, the little girl stumbled, her small frame collapsing into the fluffy snow. "I can't," she whimpered, despair etched across her delicate features. That tiny voice shattered something within me, the once resilient heart now flinching at the reality that perhaps our escape was already unraveling. I knelt beside her, grasping her shoulders gently. "You have to be brave, sweet girl. Just a little further." But as I spoke, a loud crack pierced the air, the sound echoing like thunder. My heart leaped as I turned toward the noise, and as the ground erupted beneath us, the earth split open, opening into a chasm where Riley had disappeared, its edge now yawning before us like a dark mouth of a predator waiting to consume everything in its path. "Run!" I screamed once more, the terror rising again as the shadowy figures surged toward us from the building. I could feel the icy fingers of doubt clutching at my heart, taunting me with the image of Riley at the edge of that abyss. In that moment of desperation, I had to choose. The little girl's sobs echoed against the unforgiving winter air. I faced an impossible decision. As Bane leaped toward the girl, ready to protect, I felt the sinking realization that somehow, in this labyrinth of terror, I would have to confront the darkness, not just for myself but for all of them, and for Riley, whose fate still lingered uncertainly in the depths of that chasm. "Please, find me," I whispered into the wind, a prayer to an unseen force, not knowing if those words would reach her across the unyielding void we had all unknowingly stepped into. The world felt as if it had frozen around us, the silence choking the air. I was lost in the fray, torn between the urgency to escape and the weight of the impending chaos that threatened to engulf us. All around me were the sounds of footsteps pounding through the snow, shadows looming ever closer, tangled with the essence of betrayal and desperation. With every heartbeat that passed, I felt the vulnerability of those I was fighting to protect: the little girl, the woman who had stood against adversity, and the fierce spirit of Bane. Could I bear to lose this found family again? "Stay with me," I implored, tilting my head toward the girl, who was struggling to keep pace, exhaustion threatening to claim her. "You've got this. Just a little bit further, The icy breath of the wind rushed past, a bitter reminder of the stakes involved. I could see the determination flickering within Bane's eyes, their fire igniting a spark of bravery. His wild spirit surged ahead, barking in defiance, a guardian of loyalty that propelled us forward, urging us to escape the shadows closing in. Each step we took dug deeper into the snow, but with every ounce of effort, I felt the chains of our past loosening, transforming into the very bonds that tied us closer together. With the howls of the approaching men behind us, I drew on that resolve, as if the universe itself had tasted the bitterness of our struggles. Then, in the midst of the chaos, I heard Ida's voice, clear and true, cutting through the darkness. "We're coming!" It was Riley's voice, rising like the sun breaking through heavy clouds. My heart soared in disbelief. I turned to see her break through the other side of the chasm, her fiery hair dancing like flames as she dashed toward us. There was an urgency in her step, and as she reached out, I caught her gaze, the same fierce, unwavering spirit radiating from her. But before I could call out, I saw a figure behind her, a shadow lurking just out of reach. "No!" I screamed, pivoting toward the encroaching threat. The man was there, closer than ever, with malevolent glee lit in his eyes. The monster who had lingered in the background like a blight on this day of hope. "Riley, get down!" I pushed the little girl to the side. In one swift motion, the world spun, and I rushed forward, knowing I had to protect them both. "You want me? Come at me!" I roared, channeling every ounce of fear and fury coursing through my veins. The man's eyes narrowed, seeing only a wall of defiance before him, a spark that wielded hope. I had no fear for my own life, only for the futures I would fight to save. As he lunged, Bane surged forward, a fierce warrior unleashed. He leapt at the man, teeth bared, a primal force pressing toward his target. For the first time, the shadows surrounding us drew back as confusion flickered across the man's face. "Get off me, you mutt!" he shouted, but Bane was resolute, a tempest defending his own. And that's when something remarkable happened. Instead of bolting to safety, the girl picked herself up, her little hands clutching the stuffed animal she had brought along, a talisman of her childhood innocence, and, with a steady voice, she cried, "Please don't hurt my dog." Every eye turned toward her. The room hung suspended in time, tears pooled in my eyes. The purity of her plea broke through the tumult surrounding us, spilling forth a balm of solidarity that blanketed us all. It anchored Bane, infusing him with strength, reminding us that loyalty and love stood above all else. The man faltered, glancing from her to Bane and back again, as if somehow the clarity in her voice flickered brighter than his dark intentions. "What do you know about love?" he stammered, his bravado cracking. "You don't understand what's at stake." And in that pregnant pause, an epiphany blossomed inside me. I stepped forward, willingness ringing out against the icy air. "You're wrong." I met his gaze, holding firm. "She understands everything. Love is what brought her here. Love is what broke your chains." As the shadows receded, something crackled in the man's demeanor, something raw and torn. I never meant to. His breath hitched, vulnerability clawing its way to the surface. Bane growled low, sensing the shift, and I felt the hope swirling around us in a whirlwind. "I know you were hurt," I continued, choosing my words carefully, "but you can't see how you've hurt others. That cycle doesn't have to continue. Choose differently." His facade faltered, spiraling into chaos. Glimmers of humanity flickered through the shadows of his past. Bane was our link, our bond forged through shared torment and love. Behind us stood Riley and the little girl, warriors in their own right. All at once, I felt the power of our unity. They would fight for one another despite the crippling fear before us. And then, with a tremor that echoed through the air, I caught a whisper of truth from where we stood, all embers igniting brighter. "I will help you." The words tumbled from the man's lips, raw and real, surprising even himself. In that moment, the icy grip of bitterness began to thaw. The shadows dispersed like fog on a sunny morning, and I felt the hovering dread lift as we found our footing once more. "You can choose love over fear," I reminded him gently, knowing it would take time, but the steps had begun. Together, we forged ahead, Bane by my side, Riley and the little girl at my back, the man following with tentative steps into the light. "Just take it one step at a time," I encouraged, and I could feel the threads of understanding weaving between us. And in that burgeoning peace, sewn together with threads of our shared triumph, we didn't just escape the darkness. We embraced the light, a dangerous, beautiful light that promised growth instead of stasis. A community reborn from the ashes of grief, barriers softened by love and determination. As we stepped across the threshold, sunlight broke through the veil of winter. I glanced down at the joyful little girl, Bane bounding beside us, and my heart swelled with warmth. "We did it," I whispered, my breath mingled with the crisp air. "Together," came Riley's soft reply, her smile lighting up our path anew. In that shared triumph, the world bloomed again, vibrant and alive. And as we stood united against the horizon, a voice within me echoed the promise we had forged together: "Love will always find a way."